I watched Trump's cabinet meeting today, so you don't have to, and here's my overview. We're going to start with the craziest thing that anybody said, which is that RFK Jr. says that they have 2 studies that show that children who are circumcised early have doubled the rate of autism, likely because they were given Tylenol. The meeting was about 70 minutes, and Trump mentioned Biden on 8 separate occasions. He starts off by signing a proclamation for Leif Erikson Day and then a proclamation for Columbus Day, and the guy handing it to him says that Columbus was the first European to set foot on the New World, even though he literally just signed the Leif Erikson one, and Leif Erikson was the first European to set foot in the New World, but whatever, he doesn't care about that. He says that Columbus Day, we're back. Even though it's not been fully decided on yet, he says we solved the war in Gaza yesterday and that the hostages will be back on Monday or Tuesday, and that he's planning to travel over to Egypt. I'm just going to remind you all, this was not a war, it was just a genocide committed by the Israeli state. He says Hamas took 70,000 casualties and calls that big retribution, and then says that Gaza is going to be rebuilt due to the wealth that's just in the area. The president of peace said had he not bombed Iran, then they would have had a nuclear weapon today. He says he solved 7 wars. The one in Gaza is going to be the 8th war, again, just a genocide. He says the war in Ukraine would have never happened, but he thought it was going to be the easiest one to resolve, but that they should basically just end it because they're losing 7,000 soldiers a week. He says the radical left Democrats shut down the government and that Republicans are trying to pass a clean, nonpartisan bill. So again, I've mentioned this multiple times. While they control the House and the Senate and the White House, they are not able to pass any of the things in their agenda. It just has to be nonpartisan stuff. Apparently, they can't even get something done when they have control of all 3 branches of government. He says Republicans have become the party of good healthcare and that they're going to reduce the cost of drugs by 100, 200, 300, 500%, and even more than that because we're in the process of becoming the most favored nation. He says that in his first term, he reduced the cost of drugs by 1/8 of 1%, and he was super proud of that. And then he thought about it and thought, that just makes no sense. And then he goes on this really long rant where he's saying that if other countries aren't just going to raise the prices of their drugs, then we're just going to tariff them to make up the difference, which again would just be Americans paying money because other countries refuse to raise the price of their drugs. He says drug prices weren't reduced before because there was never anyone in the office who knew what the hell they were doing, and that makes him very angry. I'm just going to remind you, he was president before. He doesn't remember that, but I'm just reminding you. He then immediately says that they're going to reduce drug prices by 100, 150, 200, 300, 400, and 500%, and that it's already starting to kick in. So just so you know, your drugs should start going down by over 100% very soon. When he met with the Pfizer CEO, he said that there are drugs in the US that cost $130, but in London you can get them for $10, and what we're going to do is we're going to work out a deal so that in London it's $18 and here it's going to be $18. Today he said that the drug in London costs $10 and here it costs $100, and the way that they're going to work out the deal is that we're going to pay $20 and London's going to pay $20. So he's just, again, completely just making up numbers. That was like less than a week ago. He says the economy we have now is blowing away the first administration's economy, and he says that no one understood tariffs, but now we have a bunch of money coming in from tariffs. I'm just going to remind you again, that is your money. He says again that Democrats are holding the government hostage due to this shutdown, even though, again, the Republicans control all 3 branches. And then he says, and this is a direct quote, "You have this AOC, I don't know her at all." He says that the big beautiful bill greatly reduced the taxes on everybody, even though it was mostly just the wealthy, and says that there's already no tax on tips and no tax on overtime. If someone can show me a pay stub that says that there are no tax on their tips, I will demonetize this entire account today. He says that the government stays closed, they're just going to shut down Democrat programs. I, again, have no idea what Democrat programs are, except for what Caroline Leavitt says, which is that they are any program that disagrees with the administration. And I put this in my notes, so I know it was bad. Marco Rubio, the whole time, you can just see on his face, he's like, will you please just shut up? Will you please stop talking? But he doesn't say anything. He just like kind of rolls his eyes and just like keeps looking around. I haven't brought this one up in a long time because it's so stupid that I don't bother to cover it whenever he says it, but he's been saying it a lot more recently, so I guess I might as well. He brings up winning 2,500 counties versus the 525 that Kamala Harris had, as if like a county right outside of New York City is the same as like a county in the middle of Wyoming. They are not equivalent, but he seems to think that each one of them holds its own equivalent value to the other one. He says that prices have been brought way down. I haven't seen it, but maybe you guys have. Let me know in the comments where your prices have been brought way down. He says that energy prices are way down and that gas is very soon going to be below $2 a gallon. He then says that there's no more boats in the water around Venezuela, not even fishing boats, and that every boat that he extrajudicially kills people on is worth 25,000 American lives. And then he says that Antifa is a terrorist group that is out of control in many places, but really it's mostly just in Portland. So I guess Antifa is centered in Portland, which might be why I just thought of it as an idea and not actually a group. Apparently they're all in Portland. Pam Bondi speaks next, and she says that in Memphis they have ATF, DEA, FBI, U.S. Marshals, Park Police, Treasury officers, Homeland Security officers, and the National Guard. She also says that they arrested one child predator, I guess, and that everything that they've done in Memphis was worth it for just that one arrest. So spending millions and millions of dollars per arrest is worth it to our Attorney General. Very efficient. Then we go back to Trump. He says that Democrats want men and women sports, transgender for everyone, and now the new one that he's adding to the list is that Democrats want crime and Republicans stop crime. Trump then says we have record recruitment numbers for every branch of the military and every police department in the country and every fire department in the country. I guess he just doesn't know about how many people signed up for the U.S. military after the bombing of Pearl Harbor. We're 5.5 minutes in. I'm really going to try and fit this in 10 minutes so you can get all of this information in one go. Kristi Noem is next because these people really know how to save the American taxpayer money. She says that they're going to be buying more buildings in Chicago to operate out of. She also says that she met with the Oregon governor, the Portland mayor, the chief of police, and the superintendent of the highway patrol, and that they're all lying and disingenuous people. She says as soon as you leave the room, they request the exact opposite thing, but doesn't explain what that means. She also says that the politicians are more afraid of anarchists in the streets than they are of the politics, and that's why they don't want federal troops brought in. Back to Trump, he says that Portland is full of anarchists and that Scott Bessent is going to figure out how they're all being funded. Rubio's back up next, and he doesn't say much of import, but he does say that the agreement that they made between Israel and Palestine is going to, quote, make it possible for Gaza to be normal again. We then go back to Trump, who you can tell is getting bored about the fact that he's not able to be the one talking the whole time. And he says, since so much is going on, just raise your hand if you want to say something. We'll take a few hands, then get back to getting peace done. So, of course, Doug Burgum raises his hand. Trump calls on him, and he says that Trump used energy diplomacy to bring prosperity to Americans and peace around the world. The two conflicts that Trump ran his entire campaign on have not ended yet, and the American people are not paying less for anything. So not quite sure what he means by that. Next up is the drunk, and he says, quote, it is a personal honor to be able to witness the way you lead and negotiate. And then he says, and I don't know if this is true or not, that for fiscal year 2026, they have already met the reenlistment numbers for the Marine Corps that they were hoping for over the entire year. Back to Trump, he says that we're now getting soldiers based on merit and not the woke stuff where anyone can join. Next up is good old JD. He says that Chuck Schumer is a Palestinian and that Trump met a bunch of Israeli allies because he was a New York City real estate developer. He also says that his mom was on WIC, but that's going to get shut down because Chuck Schumer is not doing his job. Next up is Chris Wright. He says the government shutdown didn't begin 8 days ago. It began 8 or 9 months ago at the inauguration. Why, you might ask? He says because every appointee got filibustered until the Republicans went and just changed the rules in the Senate so that they could get them through. Next up is good old RFK Jr. Okay, he says by the time they're done with this, that 95% of the drugs in the US are going to be cheaper than anywhere else in the world. He also is using this as proof. He says that right before he came in this meeting, someone showed him a TikTok video of a woman who was gobbling up Tylenol and being like, F Trump. I swear to God, he said that. He says anyone who takes Tylenol during pregnancy is irresponsible. And then he references 15 rodent studies that show that if you give Tylenol to a pregnant rodent, that it particularly affects the male children they have. But yeah, because he's referencing studies, he immediately, as part of this, says, we don't actually have the proof yet, but we're doing the studies to get the proof. So they did that whole thing in September because he said he would have an answer in September with literally admitting here they had no proof. And this one's really insulting. He says that autism is now a national security issue, and then he goes into the whole circumcision thing that I mentioned at the beginning. You probably forgot about that, huh? Last Trump section, he points at a full glass in front of him and says the amount of fluid in that glass is half of the amount that they're putting into children, so at least 32 ounces. He also says that the MMR vaccine needs to be separated out, but that measles already has. He meant to say chickenpox, but he said measles. He said he's not a doctor, but he's studied this for a long time, and in fact, he was talking to RFK Jr. about it 20 years ago, and then he makes again the claim that the Amish have no autism. He says we give 82 different vaccines to children, and in Germany they only give 28. If you know anything about the Fahrenheit and Celsius conversion, those are interesting numbers for him to choose. Also on CDC.gov, it lists 19 potential vaccines that children could have up to the age of 18. And oh, by the way, yes, some of those are in multiple doses, but it's nowhere near 82. He says pregnant women should just not take Tylenol and tough it out. He also says that he's been asked to speak at the Knesset. He says that if they want him to come, then he would. And then he says again that he's been asked to speak. He says the hostages have lived in a hell that no one could have ever dreamt of. Had he not lied about his bone spurs to get out of the Vietnam draft, he might have a very different take on that. He also says he has no view on a two-state solution and says that Bibi might go a little bit out of whack, but he's very popular right now. No one should run against him. He also says Abraham Accords again. You knew that was going to come back up after he fucked it up the first time, and that 2020 was rigged. And finally, you have Brooke Rollins. She mentions Biden twice and says that because of Biden, the cost to farmers has gone up 47%. But she says that farmers are about to enter the golden age of America. 10%ers, there you go. I just saved you 60 minutes and a whole lot of headache.